Peace and blessings, and welcome to Catholic Crossroads, a Black Catholic's journey, where we discuss social and spiritual topics from a Black Catholic's perspective that is happening locally, nationally, and globally. My name is Gardis Watts.
And I'm Tina Carter.
And we're part of the Chicago Black Catholics Alliance, an organization that looks to collaborate with Black Catholics around the Chicago and the Chicagoland area. So this month, we have a couple of things that we want to discuss. Obviously, the month of June being Father's Day.
Yep.
And, we always have to give our fathers their due. We make a big hoopla about mothers in May, and June is our time. So
yes, your time is that.
We have to celebrate our fathers out there, but not just our biological fathers, but fathers, all men who have taken on a fatherly figure role. Mm-hmm. This month we will also discuss about the recent consecration of a Black bishop in the United States.
Yeah.
It's been several years since a Black bishop in the United States has been consecrated, so we can add one more to the very few Black bishops that are in the United States right now. Bishop Robert Boxey in Washington, D.C. I think he was the chaplain at Howard University.
Yes.
So he has been recently consecrated as an auxiliary bishop in Washington, D.C. So that's something we will also discuss. We will also talk about our government and the four different layers of government that is important to us. When we talk about that, we're talking about city, county, state, and federal, and how that affects us as people, because this also ties into another important topic that we want to mention is the decimation of the Voting Rights Act and how that will affect voters, and not just voting rights, but generally when we're talking about the redistricting, and how that goes about, and how now redistricting is a little how should I put it? When there is racial redistricting, there's kind of like a barrier that was put up. Because before, racial redistricting was kind of how should I put it? It was happening a lot in favor of basically white Republicans. But now the redistricting is a little bit more easier for white Republicans now because of the fact that the Voting Rights Act, which was supposed to benefit Black and non-white people, is now has been decimated. So we will discuss that. But right now, reflection on fatherhood, Father's Day.
So one of the interesting things about fatherhood is that there's this saying, mama's baby's daddy's maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives this impression that fatherhood is a choice. And yet, and for some fathers it is a choice, and some who help create children in this world, create babies in this world, for whatever reason, choose not to be in that child's life. But for the vast number of other men who make that choice, it is one of the most rewarding experiences that they have. And I'm speaking as someone who doesn't have children, but of my own, and yet just watching how men interact with children that are theirs, children that aren't theirs, the uncles that are out there, the much older brothers that are out there, and how they bring forth this nurturing spirit, this nurturing nature for their children. I have this image of my brother who has two daughters. They're teenagers. One actually just graduated from Lindblom Academy. And just the proud look on his face watching his daughter walk across that aisle. And but also watching him spend time with our nieces and nephews, who are, the oldest is 3, the youngest is 1. And them crawling over him and pulling his whiskers to see if they're real or not. And them looking up to him, all of those things not only benefit the children, but I will also benefit him as well. Fatherhood is, to me, the gift that if you give it, you receive so much more in return.
Yes, it is a very rewarding thing when you think about the stuff that we as fathers give up. I am the father of 2 children, and it is just, great to watch them grow up. You see kind of like the fruits of your labor as a father. Last week you were talking about graduations. Last week my daughter graduated from high school, and just seeing her walk across that stage, getting her diploma, it was just so proud of her. As you know, I also work at a high school, and yesterday was our high school graduation, and the students that I taught, watching them, walk across the stage. And what was extra special was the fact that, they looked at me as one of their best teachers, and I felt so proud of that. Matter of fact, they got me flowers.
Oh, nice.
I
Nice.
was so shocked. I was like, "Oh my God, my students gave me flowers," and I was like, and as a man, you be like, "All right, I'll take the flowers," because they this is what they thought about me in my time with them, and I was so glad that I was able to make an impact on their lives in their time at the school, because being at the school is not a lot of time, and for me to just have that there. And I remember one of my students had told me, he's she was like, "Mr. Watts, we like you because you listen to us." And I guess apparently not a lot of adults in their lives like really really listen to them. And so I think the issue we have with our relationship with our children is we have to listen to them. Now, if we don't, then we don't know how to guide them,
Right.
because of the fact that we're not understanding what they have to go through, during this period of time. Because you and I growing up, we had a whole set of different problems. We
True.
didn't have to deal with social media and all of this stuff. Now,
True.
mind you, we still had bullying and all this other stuff,
Right.
but it was all up in our face.
Right.
Now it's all digital now.
Right.
And they have there's a lot of also expectations of this current generation as well. When we were growing up, going to college was like a plus.
Right.
It was sort of like a plus. It was sort of like you was one of the smart kids.
Right.
But now it's kind of like an expectation now, and they expect you to kind of like either enroll in college or enroll in some trade school, because
Or military.
or military, because back in the day, you could graduate from high school, get you a good job, and basically get a living wage off of that. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that from my students who said that I was a good listener, because That's what it really takes to, to nurture our future. We have to listen to what they have to say. Now, mind you, I don't agree with everything they have to say,
Right.
but at the same time, they understood that I at least heard them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we need to do with our children. We at least need to hear them. So if there is some sort of disagreement or maybe even rebuttal, we can always impart our wisdom on them, impart our knowledge.
Right.
Like, hey, I was in your situation, and this is how it's going to go if you go this direction.
Right.
So shout out to my students, shout out to my daughter. And another proud moment, my son, who was an adult, who had his first child last year. It really warms my heart to see him be a father to his child,
Mm-hmm.
just the same way I was a father to him.
Right.
So it's sort of like that, that circle of life, that
Mm-hmm.
looking at my son take care of my grandson, and it's just it just warms my heart. So it is very, very rewarding. Lots of sacrifices, but it's very rewarding as a father when you see those things come to fruition.
And the other thing that I would add to that about fatherhood, and I think that is true for fatherhood, motherhood, it doesn't matter. You have to set the example. One thing that I've learned in watching um, my younger nieces and nephews is that they watch you like a hawk. They
Mm-hmm.
mimic you. They're paying attention. They are soaking up as much as, even more so, what you do than what you say. So you have to follow this. You have to understand that whatever you do, they're watching you and they will mimic you.
Mm-hmm.
And without that, you know, if you're doing something crazy that they shouldn't be doing, trust and believe it's going to come back on you.
Yep, exactly. So shout out to the fathers out there, biological stepdads, spiritual fathers, because obviously in the Catholic Church we call our priest fathers. Also too, even in the non-traditional, non-Catholic churches and even other religious settings, there are people who are in these ministries who are considered spiritual fathers because people go to them for spiritual advice.
Mm-hmm.
So, shout out to them. And speaking of spiritual fathers, and talking about Black Catholics and Black priests,
Mm-hmm.
we have to talk about uh, one of the recent consecrations of a Black bishop in the United States.
Yeah.
Father Robert Boxey, who is now Bishop
Bishop.
Boxey from the D.C. area, and apparently Father Boxey has been a priest for over a decade,
Yeah,
and
a little bit
a
over
little
a
bit over a
decade.
decade. From Louisiana, has done a lot of work in the D.C. area. He's been a chaplain at Howard University.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we've had several Black bishops in the United States who have either died or retired.
Mm-hmm.
So the membership of the U.S. Black bishops have been decreasing,
Yeah.
and this is the first time in several years that there was a Black priest who was consecrated bishop. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I think that it's it's actually kind of amazing, his meteoric rise. And the reason why I say that is because he's also one of the youngest at 45. And when you look at his profile, he was an attorney initially. And in 2010, he he felt the call. God called him to the priesthood, and he answered the call. And in just that short amount of time, he has done a lot of great work in the DC area. And I think that it's fitting that Pope Leo recognized that and has called him to become a bishop. You know, it also speaks to the importance of vocations, I think, and especially vocations within the Black community. One of the things, and it's never been what I would call great necessarily in terms of vocations within the Black community, but I think that we have a lot of Black men out there more and more that are, I would consider to be the new face of the priesthood and what that looks like and how they can serve. And certainly Bishop Boxey is part of that new generation that was not only able to grow Howard's Howard University's space. He actually created an even safer space with development of the Sister Thea Bowman space there.
Yep.
And he was able to reach a number of students at Howard University to look at Catholicism. You know, not only to look at it, but to practice it more intentionally. So to me, that speaks volumes. The thing about being a Catholic Christian is that it is very much a lifestyle. It is very much a journey. Discipleship is. And when you have men out here like Bishop Boxey, who is showing how we can live truly Black, authentically Catholic lives, that's much to be celebrated.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, the unfortunate thing is his consecration being, you know, the first Black Catholic bishop in several years in the United States.
Yeah.
Speaks to the volumes of not just the shortage of priests in the Black community, but just priests in general.
Yeah.
And as you know, if there's a shortage of priests in various other communities, you know, Black Catholic communities are even smaller when you're talking about Black priests, because you know, what do they say about Black folks? If white people are in danger, then
we're the canaries in the coal mine.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. So obviously, the shortage of priests has really doubled the issue of Black men in the priesthood for several years, and obviously with the connection in Chicago, there was a high school, kind of like seminary school, Quigley South, where a lot of back in the 60s and 70s, a lot of our young priests during that time came from that particular institution.
Right.
One being the bishop in Washington, the cardinal. Why is his name blanking?
Are you talking about Wilton?
Yes, Wilton Gregory.
Yeah.
You know, and so this is something that when they closed in the early 90s, we stopped seeing a lot of Black priests coming into our communities, because this is where they went to high school, and this is where they picked up the calling from, because of the fact that when you're talking about, developing the priesthood,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the Black community, a lot of times that starts at an early age.
Yes.
And that calling there. Now, there are a few where the calling comes later in life,
Mm-hmm.
but they're still far from few, because a lot of us Black men, by the time we get 30, some of us are married, we have children, and at that point it's hard or impossible to get into the priesthood at that point, even the ones who aren't married. But at the same time, that calling has to be kind of early. But this also speaks to the fact that in the modern church today, especially in the United States, majority of the congregation are women.
True.
And if not a lot of men, and even in particular Black men, aren't going to church, then how do we expect to have this vocation of more Black priests in the Catholic Church? Because we don't have a lot of men who go to church, not just in the Catholic community, but all denominations.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, one can certainly talk about um, women becoming ordained, but I think that at this point that's a closed subject.
Mm-hmm.
So it begins like with anything at home, and as Gardis mentioned, it does start early. You have to introduce that is as noble of a vocation as any other. Becoming a police officer or a fireman or a firefighter or a doctor or an attorney even. And actually there are some priests that are actually attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of it is recognizing that members of the church are community helpers, just like anyone else, just like your police or your firefighters, postmen, even government officials and politicians. They are all part of the community. And it's important to talk about the work that they do just as much as anybody else's work. I mean, not only is the work spiritual in nature, but it is also a work of quite literally helping the community. And it can be helping the community through either food pantries, community closets, soup kitchens, being available as a listening ear. These are all of those skills that priests have to have in order to serve their congregations. In addition to that, they also perform different duties, including services to the sick and ailing. If you need a person dies,
Mm-hmm.
all of these Catholic social teachings we see in our priest. So it's not a separate entity. I think that sometimes we were treating the idea of faith and how they work in our community as separate and distinct from everything else. And I think it does the community a disservice when you do it that way.
Yeah. And so when we think about uh, the active priests that are in our communities and focusing on the gospel message
Mm-hmm.
within the modern times, and one of the things about the modern times that intertwines with that gospel message, you talked about Catholic social teaching, is justice.
Yeah.
Because the thing too is that we have to also kind of distinguish what is charity and what is the actual work of justice,
Mm-hmm.
because these two need to these two need to go hand in hand, because of the fact that charity, while it takes care of the immediate needs of the community, is not necessarily justice. So justice is basically that part where we do the legwork of changing policies, where we don't have to feed homeless people or feed people that are having issues getting food because they don't have any money or resources.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to work that charity towards that arc of justice. So hopefully there's a point in our society where we don't need food banks anymore, that everybody is able to make a living wage, everybody has a house, everybody has food on their table for them and their children every night. And so this is the work of justice, to bring forth what we like to consider that kingdom of God,
Right.
where nobody is abused, nobody is not without,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to work towards that arc of justice. Now, obviously, there are a lot of political wranglings and red tape when you think about our governments, and especially capitalistic governments that need poor people and homeless people uh, to fund kind of like, how should I put it, the 1%,
Mm-hmm.
and the 99% of us make the resources for the 1% to live lavishly,
Mm-hmm.
because we are considered the working class.
Yeah.
But our priorities as the working class are not, in a lot of governmental entities,
Right.
are not prioritized. This is why we have poor and homeless people, because they're even lower prioritized when we think about their status.
Right.
Think about when you listen. Okay, so we're about to enter an election season with the midterms,
Yeah.
and then look at it 2 years later with the presidential election, or even next year with some local elections. Find out how many times somebody actually talks about the poor and homeless. The last couple of years, you have heard nothing about the poor and homeless.
Except that there may be a nuisance.
Exactly. So when we listen to our politicians, uh, in their offices campaigning, and it doesn't even have to be a particular party.
Right.
None of them are talking about the poor and homeless, except, like you said, unless they're a nuisance. Nobody is talking about solving that issue. So we talked about before we started recording the four layers of government. We were
Right.
talking about city, county, state, and federal. So what do you have to
Well,
say
so
about?
so what the first thing that you have to remember is that your vote counts, and your vote counts at all levels. Actually, I would say that your vote counts the most at the local level, because those policies are the ones that are going to most directly affect you. So it's important to recognize how your system of government is laid out on the local level. In the case of Chicago, we have a mayor and alderman. And the alderman, it's what, 50 wards
Mm-hmm.
in Chicago? So each alderman then deals more directly with the basic needs of your neighborhood or community. The mayor looks at things city overall, the city overall. It's important to know who represents you as your alderman. Does the alderman that represents you have the same goals and minds for your community? Does it have, is it trying to fix or solve some of the issues from potholes to homelessness on that level? What exactly are they offering? Do Can you go to their office and um, make either a complaint or a concern about something that you're seeing in your neighborhood? That's what their role is. The role of the mayor is to make sure that things in the city overall are functioning. And because of the size of Chicago, Chicago has access, or it used to have access, I'm not so sure how true it is now, of federal fundings more directly. How are those funds being used? Are they serving what they were intended to give? And are they helping what's going on in your community? All of these things are important. Look at your local school councils. Your local school councils are going to help you determine what type of school you're going to get, and not only the type of school that you're going to get. That's going to include the funding. That's going to include the support that you need. We see a disparity in the city of Chicago, and we've seen this disparity for decades. That some schools in some communities get better resources than other schools in other communities. And that directly affects what children are learning and what they can eventually bring to the table when they get older. All of these things are connected. The next thing that we don't necessarily hear about as much is county level. And the county level, like we have a county board president, in this case is Tony Preckwinkle. It's a larger area, but even within the county, it's important to know who those county board commissioners are and how are they representing you. How are they representing your community? How are they representing the city? All of those things are important. I mean, I remember some years ago when Tony Preckwinkle had a sugar tax that was very, very, very unpopular.
Yeah, she got the nickname Queen Sugar at that point.
Yeah, yes. And it had to be repealed.
Yeah.
Because the people spoke. And not only did they speak with their dollars, but they also spoke with their votes.
So you are on county right now. Very important, because outside of that particular small sugar tax, what other tax does the county that the county control, and it has been something that is part of gentrification, part of mass movements from certain areas because it's unaffordable. What is that? Property taxes.
Yes. So for those of you who own property,
but even renters are getting affected by this too.
Yeah, they are. They are. But for those who own property and even renters, it's important to know what it is that they are doing, what it is, the monies that they get in, what are they using it for? How are they using that money? Are they being good stewards with the money? And all of this is connected. It's important that we are informed citizens. And when you move from county to state, that's another layer. And that's made up of the governor, lieutenant governor. You also have state representatives as well as state senators. They represent you, and they represent you on the state level. So, in addition to state taxes that we have to pay, and issues with the DMV, all of that is state level. There's currently a bill on the state that is trying to see if they can create enough of a tax break to keep the Chicago Bears football team in the state of Illinois.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what does that mean? That means yes, we get to keep if they are successful. Yes, that means that we do get to keep this great American football team in the state. But what does that do for your taxes? And the question that you have to ask yourself is the cost worth the benefit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with state officials, they also control resources going to parks,
Yes.
going to several different functions of municipalities, and it's crazy when you think about some of the stuff that happens, especially in the Chicago and Chicagoland area. Um, Obviously there have been some misdealings in the south suburbs
Mm.
where and this is in the news where the mayor of Calumet City was also a state senator, uh, or a state rep. I'm sorry, he's a state rep. He's holding two positions, and as the Calumet City mayor and as a state rep, he has a particular power in his grasp because if you look on the news, Calumet City's government is feuding all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the mayor in this particular town is feuding with the city clerk, who is also the park commissioner. So they got into a beef, and now it's gotten to a point where the mayor of that particular city has said, because of the fact that he's a state rep, that he will vote against his own city getting funds for a park. This is the issue that we have with certain Illinois politics and politicians.
Yeah.
And he's not the only one either.
Yeah, and I mean, and so that's the thing that you, as the voter, have to think about. Number one, should your mayor also hold another elected office? That's a question to have. Should your government officials hold more than one office at the same time? And what type of conflict of interest can that entail? These are questions that you have to have. Just as we want them to be good stewards, you too have to be good stewards. And the best way that you can be a good steward is to know what it is that you're voting for, know who it is that you're voting for, and vote. And finally, the last one is federal. And that's where we have president, vice president, and we have the House of Representatives and the Senate. And they also represent us. Now, with each of those layers, they all affect us in some form or fashion. And because each of them affect us, and that also goes for the courts, because we have um, county courts, and we have state courts, and then we have federal courts. Because all of those affect us in some form or fashion, it behooves you to know who it is that represents you. because, as we all know, knowledge is power.
That is true. But here's a little pushback that I'm going to have.
Mm.
Okay. So I think the issue that we have is, and especially the masses of us, that we really don't understand how politics work. And obviously you gave a pretty good example of some basic stuff, some basic level stuff that we just need to know.
Mm-hmm.
However, even if we get beyond that
Mm-hmm.
and we know who our politicians are, we still get the same money grabbing politicians that don't care about, like I said earlier, poor and homeless, much less the working class folks, and just cater to their rich donors. So, if we are on a level of saying knowing who our politicians are, how do we get them in line to do the work of who voted for them? Because the thing is, politicians, because of the fact that our political system is so intertwined into money now,
Yeah.
politicians don't adhere to they don't adhere to much to voters anymore.
Right.
In a lot of cases, they don't. They adhere more to their donors. So for me, I think the problem too is that when somebody says the system is broken, it's not. The system to me is working exactly the way it's supposed to be working. Now, I know that's a hard truth for some folks, but unfortunately it is. So, to me, our task is, how do we break the system? How do we break this system of funneling money and resources to privileged people of certain ethnic backgrounds to actually flowing to people who need it the most? And so when we look at something like voting,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying, look, voting is a very important part of the political process, but it's not the only part of the political to gain political power. I know we often emphasize voting, and yes, you should practice the franchise. You should, that is your right. But I think the problem too is that we need to look at voting in a different way as well.
Okay.
Take, for example, this whole thing about the decimation of the Voting Rights Act.
Okay.
So last month, in late April,
Mm-hmm.
the Supreme Court struck down what is called Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And I
Right.
think it was a case of Louisiana and I forgot that county or the people that went against the redistricting. But the narrative is Louisiana had 6 congressional districts. 2 of them were black.
Correct.
They were able to strike down the 2 black districts because, according to the people who filed the lawsuit, said that it was racial gerrymandering. Well, here's the thing. With that, the Voting Rights Act of Section 2 was able to protect people of color who are in particular districts to keep their district,
Intact.
intact. Well, politicians at that time was able to draw lines in between it to kind of split their votes.
Packing or cracking. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is what is called racial gerrymandering. So the thing is that it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they was in favor of Louisiana politicians actually decimating the 2 black districts to split the vote and basically kind of have this particular political power. Because here's the thing about voting, because nobody up until now nobody like really talked about this, because lines can get drawn easily where they can actually kind of depower a lot of black voters in a particular area. And one last thing, this is important because of the fact that this was used when Harold Washington was mayor of Chicago. So for those who know about the history of the first black mayor of Chicago, in his first term, he had to deal with the city council.
Right.
The Verdoliak 29. Alderman
Right.
Ed Verdoliak was one of his political opponents. Well, Verdoliak had 29 people that was on his side, and Harold Washington had 21, which means nothing got done in Chicago during his first term because they would not pass any of
Right.
his ordinances, or they would try to pass an ordinance and he would just veto it automatically.
Right.
So what he did was he filed a lawsuit against the city of Chicago's redistricting map from 1981 because he found that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act protected that. Because apparently, when they drew the maps here in Chicago in 1981, they found that there was some racial gerrymandering going on.
Mm-hmm.
So when the federal courts came back, they ruled in favor of Harold Washington. So they had to do a redistricting again in 1983, and basically what happened was a lot of black and brown neighborhoods were able to vote for aldermen that was in favor of Harold Washington. So when Harold Washington got reelected, the city council was in his favor,
Right.
26 to 24.
Right. But one thing to point out about what the Supreme Court said was that it was so racial gerrymandering. What they did was they conflated racial gerrymandering with political gerrymandering. So basically saying that if all of these people here who vote democratically, we can break that up. The problem is that most black people vote democratically.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how they were able to kind of hide under that by saying that this was a political gerrymandering, not a racial gerrymandering. So what that ended up doing was taking the 6 districts, the 2 districts that Louisiana had that were majority black, back down to 1. And that also kind of led to this race to the bottom, because the next thing you know, the only black majority district in Tennessee, for example, got carved up like a pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Which was cracking. So, and when they cracked it, so now the way they redrew the district, it would be there is no Democratic district in Tennessee, which also happens to be the only black district in Tennessee. But it is interesting to note that in places like, I believe it's South Carolina and Alabama, when the question was posed to both of those states, in the case of South Carolina, the state house decided not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of Alabama, a judge ruled that no, sorry, it's racial.
Yeah.
So, and you can't do it. So, it's important that you pay attention. And as far as people that are on the ballots and stuff, again, a lot of this is important. To get a person on the ballot, depending on where you live, it requires a certain number of signatures.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get that person. And you have to really look at their record. A person will sit there and sell you the moon, the stars, and the sun, and then turn around and act like they don't know you. All you have to do is look at what's going on in the current White House.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So also too, I want to clarify with that, with what the Supreme Court did last month with that, because with Section 2, and this is something for clarification, because what they struck down was the fact that in order to prove racial gerrymandering, there has to be intent.
Exactly.
Now, here's the thing, because uh, when the original Voting Rights Act was passed in '65, actually that was the original proof. That was the original proof that gerrymandering had to happen. But however, what happened in, I think it was in the '81 or '82, they amended
They did.
they amended Section 2. Now you don't have to prove intent. You just have to prove the effects
Right.
of racial gerrymandering. So this is how Harold Washington was able to file that lawsuit, because of the fact that there was an amendment to it saying that now intent doesn't have to be proved. Now we could just see, oh yeah, they literally, you could see the effects of some neighborhoods who were, black, be migrated into another
Right.
aldermanic district, and so they were able to prove the effects of racial gerrymandering. However, when that was going through Congress back in the early '80s, there was a young lawyer who was trying to fight that.
Yes, it certainly was.
And do you know who that young lawyer was?
Our current Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
John Roberts. Very, very patient man. He finally got his opportunity to strike down what he was fighting for 40 years ago, fighting against 40 years ago. Yes.
Yeah.
So he finally got a chance to finally strike it down. So, yeah, so now this doesn't mean Section 2 is totally eliminated. However, you have to prove intent, which is, unless you're explicit about it, it's kind of hard to prove intent.
Right, right. And that's why they were able to use, that's why they were able to look at the political gerrymandering. So, what does this mean for you? It means that your vote counts. Think about it. For them to go through all of these different hoops to dilute the power of your vote means that your vote is powerful.
I will say this. I would say not just vote, but vote logically.
Yes.
Because here's the thing, we preach about voting. I think anybody over 18 can just pull a lever for a particular candidate and not knowing what they're doing. What I'm saying is it has to go beyond just the actual practicing of the franchise. Well, at least me, I'm pretty sure you feel the same. We also want you to be politically educated on this, because you just talked about your particular politicians know who they are, but in local elections, judges are also being voted on as well. So you need to know who these judges are in your county, in your state. I think federal judges are the only ones that are appointed.
Right.
But the thing is, you have to know these people as well. So also not just knowing that, but doing the work in between elections, because that's where most elections are won.
Yeah.
In between elections. So doing that work, doing the leg work. Now, here's another thing too. Not just voting, but also fighting for policies.
Right.
Because here's the thing, policies drive these particular people in office.
Right.
They drive elections. They drive how, we govern.
Right.
And so that is actually the most important thing. One of the things that is going to be up, and I'm hoping in these next few years that it's talked about more, is federal judges and Supreme Court judges,
Mm.
do they have to be appointed? Can we change that? Now, how do we do that? Well, you have to know that if it's going to pass through Congress, it has to be a majority, or else
3/4, I believe.
3/4, or else there has to be a constitutional convention. And when was the last time we had a constitutional convention?
The last. Oh wow. It's been a minute.
Exactly. So, but this is important because of the fact that with the Supreme Court, do we want to keep having people like Donald Trump appointing Supreme Court judges, just so they can be on the bench to do his bidding? Do we want him to appoint federal judges to sit on the bench and do his bidding? Or do we want a real democratic process where judges are actually selected by the people? So this is important when we think about politics, because this all comes to a circle. So like I said, never said don't vote. Voting is very important, but there's got to be something behind that vote. There's got to be an awareness of why are we pushing that lever? Why are we selecting this particular candidate? Not just because they're Democrat or Republican,
Right.
Not just because they're black or they're white. There are certain aspects of voting that we have to understand in order for our vote to be powerful. Because if we're just pulling a lever just because this particular candidate says something nice or what we like, then to me it's basically kind of useless. So power behind that vote comes with knowledge and understanding of what the political system that you live in really is.
Absolutely. And a couple of things to bear in mind. Just like the Republican Party, now the Trumplican Party, has played the long game in this, not only do you have to think strategically, but you have to think about what lasting effect do you want to have. When I think about Project 2025, for example, the truth of the matter is Project 2025 was the brainchild of something that occurred in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
So here it is in the 1960s. Now we're in 2026, about 50 years later, and it's coming to fruition. So bear that in mind. And a word about federal judges. At the very least, I don't believe that they should be serving for life. I do believe that just like with certain offices, you have term limits. For the judges, they should have term limits too. 20 years. I think that that's more than reasonable. The other thing to also consider is we have to always look forward. When we look back, we're looking back in terms of the history that we have and what we can learn from that history. We're not trying to go backwards, but it's important to learn. So with that in mind, think about candidates that are forward-looking, not backward-looking. And that might also include, dare I say it, that there might be some there should be some limits on the age of some candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, should a candidate run for office for president, for example, when they're 75, 80? I'm going to say no.
Well, yeah, so that is, I mean, it's something to think about when we're thinking about politics. And also, too, stop falling for candidates that just come out of nowhere, because this is another problem that we have, and this is why illogical voting sometimes is more deadlier than just not voting at all.
Right, because a number of people will vote against their interest. A number of people will vote against their interest. And when you vote against your interest, um, not only are you hurting yourself, you're also hurting your family, the family that you're supposed to protect.
So that's our show for the month. We thank you for joining us in this video. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have Facebook, and we also have Twitter. Write a comment on this video. Let us know
Yes.
what we're doing. We also have an electronic monthly publication called The Pulse of Black Catholic Chicago, which Tina is the managing editor.
Yeah.
So if you want to subscribe to it, we'll have the email. Just email us in this description, and we'll send you a monthly publication to it. So we talk about issues of not just the Black Catholic community, but Black people in general. So we have articles from myself, Tina, and various other guest writers as well. And we also talk about certain things that are happening within the Black Catholic community as well.
Yes.
So if there's nothing else, Tina, you want to close us out in prayer?
Sure. And may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his light shine upon you and give you peace. Today and always, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.